welcome back to Indulgence by TKM Candle Company. Today we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of candle making. And one of the main important things when it comes down to candle making is wax. And I know a lot of you are probably like, okay, that's common sense. But here's the thing. When it comes to choosing the correct wax, that could be very tedious and slightly confusing. All right, because with so many different wax out there, right? There's beeswax, there's paraffin, there's soy, coconut-soy, so many types. That part could be, like I said before, the complicated part, right? If you don't get it right, then everything could, turn out not so great. So just to recap, we're going to be talking about the importance of choosing the right wax, also pros and cons, and also what makes a wax luxury versus just an ordinary candle. What is candle wax and why is it important? Candle wax is the main fuel when it comes to making candles. It impacts the sustainability, the cold throw, hot throw, and also whether or not if you're going to call that candle luxury or just a regular ordinary candle. What are some common types of waxes? If you are new to making candles, as I said in the intro, that part could be a little bit tedious. However, if you've been in the candle industry like me for, I think it's about 4 to 5 years, I've dibbled and dabbled in quite a few different types of wax. And at first, it was a bit much, to say the least, okay? Because I couldn't figure out whether or not if I wanted my candle to be more so like the everyday candle that you may find like maybe in a discount store or even Bath and Body Works, or if I wanted to create like a luxury candle, like sort of like Diptyque, if you will, right? So choosing the correct wax was more so, for me, I think it was a little bit harder than wicking. Believe it or not, because if I take you to my storage room where I keep all of my candle supplies and stuff, I have so many different waxes, from apricot soy wax to soy wax to cocoa soy wax to paraffin wax to waxes that I never even opened before. I ordered it thinking that it was the right choice and never got around to opening the box. So with that being said, let's talk about the different types of waxes along with the pros and cons of each wax. I think you would definitely appreciate that. The first wax we're going to talk about is paraffin wax. Paraffin wax is not only affordable in cost, so that would be considered a pro, right? However, it has a great cold and hot throw. I mean, you can smell that candle a mile away. The only bad thing about paraffin wax candles is the fact that it's petroleum based and it's not good for our respiratory system. Not to mention, as you're burning the candle, the soot that it collects around the jar could be very disheartening. But if you want a good smelling candle, if you don't mind the soot, then go ahead. Another very popular wax would be soy wax. Soy wax, in my opinion, is not hard to work with. It's also clean burning and affordable. You light your candle, and by the time the candle gets down to, like, let's say the middle or even the very end, that wax is going to remain clean. One of the cons with soy wax is the frosting, and also it has a weaker scent throw, unlike the paraffin. And that's pretty much it when it comes down to the cons, right? So you're gonna get some fragrance notes coming from that soy wax, but it's not gonna be as pungent and as noticeable like with the paraffin. The next wax we're gonna talk about is one of my favorite waxes, and that's the coconut-soy wax. One of the pros with the coconut-soy wax is it has a really, really good scent throw, okay? To me, when it comes down to wicking, it's easy to work with, and you're gonna get that smooth top. Every now and then with making coconut soy candles, once the candle starts to solidify, you're gonna find sometimes slight sinkholes. But if you're going with, like, let's say a hot heat gun, and you just basically remelt the candle, the top, or even save back a little bit of that wax in the pitcher, you can go in and pour some extra wax on top of the candle, and you are gonna have a smooth top just like this. Just like this, really smooth, smells amazing. And the great thing about this wax is it burns clean from beginning to end. Now, the only problem is that will be considered a con would be the fact that it's a little bit pricier. So with that being said, you have to determine whether or not if you're gonna choose coconut soy wax to be your everyday household candle and maybe sell it for less, or are you gonna mark that price up and sell it for a little bit more? Because it could definitely fall into the category of luxury, if you will. The next wax we're gonna talk about is beeswax. Beeswax is not only a natural wax, it's definitely long burning, but the con with the beeswax is temperature regulation. Especially if you're going to be shipping during the summer months, the beeswax tends to melt a little bit easier. So you have to take that into consideration. Are you going to sell your beeswax candles locally, right? Like maybe in a storefront, or maybe like out in the open, right? If you have, like, let's say maybe a seller's permit, depending on the state that you live in. Or are you only going to sell candles during the high sale time of the year, which is like fall into the winter months, Christmas, and so on and so forth? However, you still have to take into retrospect that in some places their winter is 80 degrees. If I were you, I would definitely figure out whether or not if beeswax would be the way to go, simply because it melts a little bit easier, sort of like the soy wax as well. One of the cons for beeswax is the fact that it's a little bit harder to source, right? Not every vendor has beeswax. However, I think Candle Science started selling beeswax, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't tried it out from Candle Science. And last con would be it's a little bit more pricier. So you have to, like I said, once again, you got to figure out whether or not if you want to rock out with the beeswax, and decide whether or not if you're going to consider selling it luxury or non-luxury, and what your price markup is going to be in order to make a profit. A lot of people do appreciate beeswax simply because it's naturally sourced, and for those out there who have allergies, they find it to be better as well. And before I forget, another con is it really doesn't hold the scent throw as good as the coconut soy or soy waxes, or even paraffin. So that's something to definitely take into retrospect. We're going to be talking about coconut wax. Coconut wax provides you with that soft, creamy, smooth texture. The tops, absolutely beautiful. However, they're usually very, very soft. Shipping is usually a problem from time to time, right? Depending on where you're shipping. And they're usually never 100% coconut wax. They're usually blended. Last but not least, let's talk about apricot soy wax. Apricot soy wax is not much work. When I say not much work, I'm simply referring to the fact that after the candle cures and it solidifies, you don't have to take the hot heat gun and heat it up to remelt it, or even pour extra wax on top, because with the apricot cocoa soy, that wax automatically, it gives you that nice smooth top, which most of us appreciate, right? So it's less work. However, when it comes down to the cold throw, in my opinion, for working with it for a while, I can't smell anything. It's not as pungent, right? The fragrance notes, they're just not there. However, if you leave it to cure for a longer time, eventually you'll start to smell something. But nevertheless, when it comes down to the burning, that's when you're gonna kind of smell something. So it holds on to the fragrance pretty good. However, one of the cons when it comes down to the apricot cocoa soy is the fact that it's pretty pricey. Maybe a little bit more pricier than beeswax, okay? Depending on the brand and the company that you're gonna go with. Also, apricot cocoa soy, for me, the scent throw is not as good. It's not. But give it a try and let me know if you like it, of course, because we all have different waxes that we prefer to use. But as I said, one of the great cons is the fact that it is easy to work with. When it comes to wicking, it's not as hard, and the solidification is just that smooth, nice, creamy top. Now let's move on to the next thing, right? What wax do I like to work with? When it comes down to the waxes, as you know, I've dibble and dabble in so many. I have to honestly say I love working with coconut-soy. Easy to wick. Yes, every now and then with the drying process, I would have to go in and add maybe a little bit extra wax on top, or maybe go in with the heat gun to give it that nice smooth top, because I'm very meticulous when it comes to my candles. I want them to look perfect, even though I know a lot of people say, listen, all they care about is the scent throw. You don't have to do all of that extra work. I like to put in the extra work because I want something that's definitely going to represent our brand, right? Which is Indulgence by TKM Candle Company. So I take the extra mile. However, I find that the scent throw, as far as cold throw, it's there. Hot throw, same thing, right? And what I really like when it comes down to the coconut-soy wax candles is the fact that it's a clean burn from beginning to end. I mean, not even a speck of anything, of any type of soot or any blackening around the rim. You don't get none of that. So if you're gonna sell your candles based on the fact that it's clean burning, not only is it okay for your respiratory system, you definitely could push it on that aspect as well. You could charge a little bit more if you want to, because if you're creating, let's say, maybe a luxury candle, your coconut-soy candle would allow you to shine as well. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, that's about it when it comes down to the coconut-soy candle and why I prefer it over the other waxes. Now, when it comes down to shipping, could be a little bit tedious. Got to be careful. Make sure if you're shipping through the summer months, there's certain things that you could buy from different candle vendors that's going to keep your candles cool when it comes down to, let's say, packaging and wrapping. So therefore it doesn't sweat and end up melting before the customer obviously gets the product. That would be crazy. What you might not know about candle wax. Candle wax not only affects the burn, but also how it looks and smells. When it comes down to the curing time, you know what it's gonna look like while you're burning it. What is it gonna smell like? Hot throw versus cold throw. Is it more prominent during the cold throw process versus when you light it up and the hot throw? It's like, okay, it smelled great while it was curing, and you know, it just smelled like everything. And now that I lit the candle, I'm not really smelling anything. Maybe I need to move it to a smaller part of the room, that type of situation. So yes, when it comes down to the wax, it not only affects the burn, but how it looks and smell as well. That's very important. Before I go, I want to leave you with a bonus tip, okay? Luxury candles doesn't always mean paraffin free, if you get what I'm saying, because some of those high-end candle companies, in order to allow that scent throw to burst out into the air or out into the atmosphere with scent notes out of this world, sometimes they do find a way, believe it or not, to add a little bit of paraffin in there to make that scent throw stronger. I mean, any and everything to attract customers, right? So let me know what you think about this video. What is your favorite wax if you've been making candles for quite some time? And if you're new to the candle world or industry, welcome. Yes, there's more than enough room for everybody. And let me know what you think. Try to dibble and dabble with the different waxes. I wouldn't go in and buy like the largest quantities just yet, but instead purchase small quantities, kind of get your feet wet, so to speak, right? Allow your investment to be minimally small for the time being until you understand the waxes that you're working with. And that's about it, my loves. Thank you so much for tuning in to Indulgence by TKM Candle Company. And the next time I see you guys, we'll be talking about wicking, because wicking seems to be driving everybody nuts in the candle industry.